Today we'll be looking at the Renaissance, the rediscovery of classical knowledge and its application to the world, as began in Europe in the 15th century and continued into the 16th century. We first want to begin by reviewing medieval culture, what was occurring during the Middle Ages, and be able to accurately compare it with what happened during the Renaissance. In medieval culture, much of the culture was church-centered. Because of the high role of the Catholic Church, it affected every aspect of life. The predominant philosophy and educational style of the Middle Ages was scholasticism, which focused on the reconciliation of ancient knowledge and church teachings. And art was focused on by all religions. The religious aspects of art include illuminated manuscripts, churches, and various artworks, which often focus more on the message than the depiction of it itself. To fully understand the Renaissance, we also need to understand its origins. These come from the Greco-Roman influences found in Italy, and also coming from the East, from the Arabs, and from fleeing Byzantine scholars from Constantinople after its fall to the Turks in 1453, from the Crusades and post-Crusades contacts with other parts of the world that led to cultural infusion into Europe during the 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries, the growing wealth of Italy due to trade and banking, and Italy's prime position in the trade network of Europe, the connection between Europe and the Mediterranean and eastern parts of the world, and the development of printing press by Gutenberg in its advanced form, using movable type and paper that allowed for the mass reproduction of knowledge and spread to other parts of the world. The ideals of the Renaissance that developed during the 15th and 16th century, beginning in Italy and spreading to other parts of Europe, can be summarized with an acronym HISS, H-I-S-S, using the terms humanism, individualism, secularism, and skepticism. Humanism focused on human life in the here and now, and brought its inspiration and ideas from Greco-Roman ideas. Individualism focused on the worth and dignity of the individual, very different from the medieval ideas focused on church life and community. Secularism focused on non-church ideas and their value, and skepticism focused on skeptical questioning of everything in the world, whether that be the natural world, the religious world, or the political world. So what makes Renaissance art different from medieval art? We'll look at some examples here to get a better idea. Here we see Michelangelo's David, a fine work of the Renaissance sculpture. We see the Roman ideal of the perfect human form. We also see nudity, which we would not have seen during the Middle Ages. We see a realistic depiction of human size and proportions, which you would not have seen during the Middle Ages. And in the face of David himself, you see a depiction of emotion, determination by the warrior preparing to take on Goliath. Here we see another sculpture by Michelangelo, the Pieta of St. Peter's, depicting Jesus after he's taken down the cross and being held by his mother Mary. Along with the exquisite detail, the realistic depiction of the body of Christ, the purpose here of the artist Michelangelo is to invoke emotion, one of sadness, as felt by Mary in the viewer himself. Architecture also became extremely important and more advanced during the Renaissance as compared to the Middle Ages. You still have the building of great cathedrals, but they took on more Greco-Roman forms. Here we see the Duomo, the great dome of the Florence Cathedral, built beginning in the 15th century. This is the first dome built in Europe since Roman times, and would be the first of many more domes built during this period. Painting also obviously took on a great new importance, particularly portrait painting. Here we see the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. Her enigmatic smile, her realistic expressions, and look in the eyes, famous around the world. But this is one of the great examples of portrait painting, something that we also did not see during medieval period, but becomes revived with a more focus on individualism and humanism during the Renaissance. Here we see another portrait, this time of two men, the ambassadors, by the Northern Renaissance artist Hans Holbein. The Renaissance spread beyond Italy in the latter 15th and early 16th century to the Netherlands, France, Germany, England, and beyond. Here we see two ambassadors, men of wealth and political power. But what's most important here is what else is depicted. Scientific instruments and globes, artistic instruments, and musical instruments on this table show that these men are not just political and wealthy men, but also Renaissance men, well-rounded men who are interested in more than just politics and power in their everyday lives. The artist also takes a stab at a unique abstract form here in the lower portion, which looks like maybe a smudge or something else. A skull, elongated, which you can see if holding it up to a mirror at an angle. Why he does this, no one's exactly sure, but it could allude to the fact that even these ambassadors, men of wealth and power, will face death, like all of us. Here we see Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, an earlier Renaissance work from the latter part of the 15th century. In many ways, it embodies good Renaissance work. It has a classical depiction of nudity here in the form of Venus, the goddess. It has motion, both in the wind here depicted and the walking by the attendant, something you would also not have seen in medieval art, at least not depicted very well. You also have realistic single-point perspective. You have the horizon located in the background of the scene and the coast moving away, where the sky meets the ocean. You really feel like you're in a piece of work where you're seeing off into the distance. Perhaps the greatest work of Renaissance art that depicts a clear scene and the ideals of the Renaissance is Raphael's The School of Athens. Here we see a collection of philosophers, artists, scientists from ancient Greek and Roman times put together in a mythical location. It's an excellent example of single-point perspective, where off in the distance all of the various lines meet at the distant item, distant space. It's also very well balanced. Within the artistic work itself, you have many different people depicted. One of the amazing things about the School of Athens itself is that it's located in the Vatican Library. A pagan scene depicted here with no Christian attitudes, located in the center of Christianity. Uses various people as its models. At the center of the painting, you have two great philosophers, Plato and his student Aristotle. Raphael used the artist Leonardo da Vinci as the model for Plato. Raphael also uses another artist, Michelangelo, as his model for Heraclitus, another ancient philosopher. Raphael himself places himself in the painting, right up there with the big artists and philosophers of the ancient times, in the lower corner.